All right, we're looking into these supposed contradictions in the Bible. So far, we've looked at two. First one, improper reading, trying to determine there is a contradiction when it's just different, more information on the same incident. Genesis creation account creates light before the sun, moon, and stars is a question mark. Well, if you read it properly, whether you believe it or not, it implies God created it. So let's take a look at that. The Genesis account creates light before the sun, moon, and stars. We looked at that from the Bible itself. We went to the account on Genesis chapter 1. We looked at when the first day light arrived. For the first day of creation, light arrived. Look at the conclusion. Without coming from the sun, moon, and stars, because they were created afterwards. And they were not created yet. Later, the light emanating bodies were created to mark the seasons and years. So light was coming onto the earth, according to the Bible, which seems credible to me after studying it, and studying the other ideas from so-called scientific minds, which aren't scientific. The ideas are not observable, repeatable, or falsifiable. They're not even theories. As a matter of fact, the theories of evolution and the age of the universe are so much in question that we can't use anything from that point of view until some scientific theories are authenticated. And then you can go back and say, well, this is just as good as what the Bible says. Light was coming onto the earth during the first day, but not from the sun and during the night, and not from the moons and stars, for they had not yet been created. The light came from God. If such a concept sounds strange, because who God created the heavens and the earth, of which part of that is light. He doesn't have to get light-bearing bodies. He can just have light created. He created everything else. If such a concept sounds strange, let it be remembered that it is as easy for God to create waves of light energy as to create generators to produce such waves. There was no need for such generators except to serve the additional function after man's creation of marking signs and seasons, days, and years. And this phenomenon will occur again in eternity future. Compare Isaiah 60, 19-20. No longer will you have the sun for light by day, nor for brightness will the moon give you light. But you will have the Lord for an everlasting light, and your God for your glory. Sometimes when you read little cherry-picked passages here and there, or just verses, you're not going to get what the actual text says. So for your poor reading of it, you can't say the Bible doesn't show any accuracy or credibility. If you've cherry-picked everything, you go to an orchard and you pick some cherries from a cherry tree, apples and pears and oranges, and you all sell them, go back to the store and sell them as one fruit. The only fruit is you. Your sun will set no more, neither will your moon wane, for you will have the Lord for an everlasting life, and the days of your mourning will be finished. The universe was created fully grown, it did not evolve. So as noted earlier, the universe was created full grown from the beginning. God did not require millions of years to develop it into its intended usable form. The purpose of the heavenly bodies was to give light upon the earth. So this is what they did right from the beginning. Some have objected to this concept that the basis of evolutionary changes supposedly taking place in the stars. The fact is, however, no one has ever observed such changes taking place. As long as men have been observing the stars, they have always looked as they do now, allowing, of course, for the changes in orientation due to the Earth's rotation, orbital revolution, and axial wobble. So, and then the other point, the existence of novas and supernovas and theories of stellar and galactic evolution do not refute the concept of the recent creation of a mature universe. If they did exist, the only possible exception, Morris says, the only possible exception of any consequence to this statement might be the novas and supernovas that are occasionally observed in the heavens when stars apparently heat up or explode. Some of these have been observed in galaxies supposedly hundreds of thousands of light years from the Earth, not necessarily in time, just as light travels and its speed is measured. The argument is, therefore, that the stellar event produced the nova or supernova must have taken place the corresponding number of hundreds of thousands of years ago. Grand assumption, no proof. This may constitute a minor problem, but there are several possible answers. The tremendous stellar distances commonly cited are obtained only on the basis of a number of very esoteric and questionable assumptions. Geometric methods for measuring such astronomical distances can reach only to about 330 light years, so any greater distances are uncertain, to say the least. Furthermore, there is no assurance of the uniformity of the speed of light at such tremendous distances. There exist respectable models of relativity and space curvature, for example, which yield light motions such that light would reach the Earth even from infinite distances in only a few years. In any case, our uncertainty as to the exact reconciliation of these distant novas with the recent creation of the universe cannot offset the clear biblical testimony to such recent creation. We can go more and more into this, but the whole problem also is if the Earth is in the center of the universe, time is minuscule compared to on the outskirts of the universe, depending upon because of the force of gravity. The gravity reflects upon the passage of time. We're talking about theory of relativity. So that's a possibility that hasn't been disproved and hasn't been proved. There's no evidence because man doesn't live a long time to figure out how to measure these things. Well, let's look a little further. The Revised and Expanded Answers book, Don Batten, Master Books, Creation Science Foundation. Some stars are millions of light years away. Since a light year is the distance traveled by light in 1 year, does this mean that the universe is very old? Despite all the biblical and scientific evidence for a young Earth and universe, this has long been a problem. However, any scientific understanding of origins will always have opportunities for research, problems that need to be solved. We can never have complete knowledge, so there will always be things to learn. One explanation used in the past was rather complex, involving light traveling along Riemann surfaces, an abstract mathematical form of space. Apart from being hard to understand, it appears that such an explanation is not valid, since it would mean that we should see duplicates of everything. So, perhaps in created light, perhaps the most commonly used explanation is that God created light on its way, so that Adam could see the stars immediately without having to wait years for the light from even the closest ones to reach the Earth. While we should not limit the power of God, this has some rather immense difficulties. It would mean that whenever we look at the behavior of a very distant object, what we see happening never happened at all. For instance, say we see an object 1 million light years away, which appears to be rotating. That is, the light we received in our telescopes carries this information, recording this behavior. However, according to this explanation, the light we are now receiving did not come from the star, but was created en route, so to speak. So much for this. All right, so let's go on to the next. Actually, I would like to go back. This goes on and on. I would like to go back and investigate time dilation, gravity-time dilation, which has another point of view that seems to fit it. If the Earth is in the center of the universe, then time passage here is minuscule compared to outside of the center of the universe, way out in the outskirts. We've measured that by measuring the speed of light, or the distance light travels in terms of time, 1,000 feet apart. One in Meridian, England, and the other in Denver. And it was a difference. If you go over the great vast distances that the universe seems to indicate, you got things that can travel quickly from the center of the universe, or out from the outskirts to the center of the universe, astronomically quicker than some 2 points that are on the outskirts of the universe, in a matter of millions of years and a matter of minutes compared to one from the other. Gravity-time dilation. We want to go into this, and that will explain while we see light coming from outskirts of the universe, where we observe stars way, way far away, and come to the Earth, and we don't have to worry, well, how many billions of years ago did that happen? It could have been a matter of minutes ago. All right, let's take a look at gravity-time dilation. If I can find this, I'll have to go back over later. I did a study on this, or actually found a study on this. There it is. Time. The Earth may be in the center of the universe. May not. The center of gravity, hence light from distant stars arrives sooner. There's the study. The existence of supernovas and novas. Okay. Let us briefly give a hint as to how the new cosmology seems to solve the starlight problem before explaining some preliminary items in a little more detail. Consider that the time taken for something to travel a given distance is the distance divided by the speed it is traveling. That is, time equals distance divided by speed. Here it is. Dr. Humphreys. New creationist cosmology literally falls out of the equations of general relativity so long as one assumes that the universe has a boundary. In other words, that it is a center and an edge. And that if you were to travel off into space, you would eventually come to a place beyond which there was no more matter. In this cosmology, the Earth is near the center as it appears to be as we look out into space. This might sound like common sense, as indeed it is, but all modern secular Big Bang cosmologies deny this. For no evidential reason, though, no evidence. That is, they make arbitrary assumptions without any scientific necessity that the universe has no boundaries, no edge, and no center. And this assumed the universe, even galaxies, would be surrounded by galaxies spread evenly in all directions and on a large scale, and so therefore all the net gravitational forces cancel one another out with an unlimited universe. However, if the universe has boundaries, then there is a net gravitational effect toward the center. Clocks at the edge would be running at different rates to clocks on the Earth. In other words, it is no longer enough to say God made the universe in 6 days. He certainly did, but 6 days by which clock? If we say God's time, we miss the point that he is outside of time, seeing the end from the beginning. There appears to be observational evidence that the universe has expanded in the past, supported by the many phrases God uses in the Bible to tell us that at creation he stretched out. Other verses say spread out the heavens. If the universe is not much bigger than we can observe, and if it was only 50 times smaller in the past than it is now, then scientific deduction based on general relativity, GR, means it has to have expanded out of a previous state in which it was surrounded by an event horizon, a condition known technically as a white hole, a black hole running in reverse, something permitted by the equations of general relativity. So there's some scientific points here that we're basing it upon, not just a story. As matter passed out of this event horizon, the horizon itself had to shrink, eventually to nothing. Therefore, at one point, this Earth, relative to a point far away from it, would have been virtually frozen. An observer on Earth would not in any way feel different. Billions of years would be available in the frame of reference within which it is traveling in deep space for light to reach the Earth, for stars to age, and so on, while less than one ordinary day is passing on the Earth. All this stuff is happening out there. The further out you get from the center of the universe, billions of years go by. We have just 24 hours on the Earth. That's dependent upon whether this is true or not. This massive gravitational time dilation would seem to be a scientific inevitability if a bounded universe were expanded significantly. Well, God creates all things. Why couldn't he create it that way? And we can measure it truly scientifically without any fiction. In one sense, if observers on Earth at that particular time could have looked out and seen the speed with which light was moving toward them out in space, it would have appeared as if it were traveling many times